Welcome, everyone, to the latest edition of System Override. Bri, how's your day been?
It has been pretty good. We went and got to do a fun we were working with some students on our pilot at a post-secondary, and so we got to go sit with their capstone and talk to them about some of their business kind of projects they're working on, which was really fun. And I loved just getting into a different hat, where you kind of start thinking about it from the other lens and providing advice. And I felt like that gave me even just really nice reflection for me in like, how we do things.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really great. I think you did a good job of summing it up, but you really see the how the process works and how they frame things,
Hmm.
and I just get really energized by
So
they're just
energized.
like I've said it. We're raising children in these two generations of Z for the American friends, and and alphas, and they're great groups of people. Like, these guys
Oh.
are energized and have lots of great ideas, and they have a really neat perspective on work. So, selfishly, it was also some really good research for us on how they think about workplace and careers and how the struggles they're currently having on employment and mapping their skills that they have today into jobs that they could get now, because most of
Hmm.
this class was graduating.
Yeah. And I just find this generation and the one, like, are they Gen Z still and then Gen
These
A is a
guys are
bit
still
younger?
Gen Z.
Yeah. Like, I find these younger, like, or Gen Z and like, they're just so lovely and thoughtful and
Mhm.
just like, just so thoughtful and just like really smart and like motivated. And I don't know, like, we were talking about it after and just being like, I know sometimes people always, I think it's classic, like, millennials got poo pooed on, Gen X were poo pooed on. Like, everyone just poo-poos the next generations
Yeah,
coming up because it's just youth. It's not the generation. It's just youth. Like, let's
yeah,
just it's just being young until you get to be that certain age. But it's like I'm very excited for them. I think
yeah.
they're gonna do really cool, cool things for the world.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I love that, so this afternoon, we also have a session with our own team. Like, all of us are getting together to do some brainstorming, so it really opens up the creativity and the way to think about, as we go into this planning session that we're doing this
Hmm.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I was just thinking, like, I wonder if people are weirded out that like you're sitting where I normally would be
I
sitting on
was
the
just thinking
podcast. They're like,
I was thinking
why are
you must
you
be weirded
there?
out.
I am. I don't know what to do with my hands. I'm like, how do I sit here? This is weird.
So we had to move the podcast today to a different recording date, and I said to Brie earlier in the week, I'm like, "Where are we gonna record it? We're sort of like between venues." And she's like, "I guess we'll do it at my house." So I'm in
My
Brie's
house.
office in case you didn't know.
And I'm sitting downstairs, so my dog's not a jerk at Shannon sitting down here. So we traded places.
We have to always make sure we take care of the animals.
Yeah,
Animals
they're
definitely need to be
foremost,
comfortable in their space. Okay, let's jump into it because we have some very cool stories today, some different ones. I excluded all headlines meaning terminations. We're not talking about
Over it.
companies doing terminations. But I found this really interesting one today that was about micro shifting and companies that are looking at, using bursts of time and the creativity that can come out in like a 90-minute, 2-hour time slot, then take some breaks and then back at it. And there was some both opposing views on the topic. Brie, what do you think about micro shifting?
Personally, love this concept. I think one from the sense of it's the full integration of work to life. Like, if you can throughout the day do spurts of work interspaced with your life, whether that's like family duty, cooking, whatever, gym or whichever. I also think from a science brain perspective, this is very interesting from a performance perspective because changing activity, especially in a physical way, will reset your brain out of into like a new space. And
Yeah.
so I'm actually very intrigued to see how this helps people on it's so interesting because I feel like companies are always if you're not, you're not working, you're not getting as much done and you got to sit here for 8 hours, but I think that actually creates a languishing brain and
Mm,
mindset and you just like it's like yes, I am physically here in body, but I'm not actually like really crushing it and in the zone and necessarily and that's when, you start slacking your friend, you go for a
yeah.
coffee, you do that sort of stuff. And so I think I'm interested to see one, how this helps people manage. And like as a mom, I love this because this is how I have to live my life right now. Like
Right.
my life has to be a bit of a mess because like I'm, dropping kids off and picking them up because my husband works like aligned to the markets in the States. And so it's like weird hours and they're super early and it just misses the windows and our kids are in school. And so there's very specific drop off and pickup times that thou shalt must be there at a certain time unless they're doing aftercare or whatever. But
Yeah.
I've started a company, so let's cut some costs out of life, and I'll just pick them up, all of these things. And also just managing a household of like a couple kids is a very busy time. And so being able to do what I want to do professionally and still manage. And I think the other thing too is it's not managed. This helps me thrive as a parent, as a mom, as a partner, that I don't feel like my life has to be so segregated and I'm time blocking in a way that really doesn't align to that. I'm excited for this and I'm excited for how people will be motivated in it and I'm excited for what it can actually do. I think the biggest thing with all of these things that is going to be the hardest challenge for employers is like you got to be a little more organized. That's what all these things are. Remote work, all of it. You got to be a little more organized and know how to lead. You have to
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
lead, not
There's the
manage.
there's the trick.
Yeah.
But I think that's exactly it. Like even in our own company, part of
Mhm.
it is that the employee has to feel like their leader trusts that
Mhm.
in their microbursts, they are like getting extraordinary outcomes. And then when they're off doing something else and like in between their microbursts, they actually can't be reached. And you have to respect that time, but knowing and believing that they will get better outcomes if an employee works, these smaller grouped up hours, which let's be honest, that's probably what you're getting today.
It's
Right?
honestly no different than what you're getting. It's
Exactly. We
just
just you need them for
yeah,
that other time that they're not
yeah,
productive today. Not that you're
exactly.
not paying these guys either, because I don't think that this moves away from a salaried model necessarily, but it is just about outcomes versus hours in, and that those
100%.
hours in are broken up as the employee, wants them to or works around their life, but the expectation and the outcome isn't any different. Just the path and journey that you get there is.
Yeah, and I think, like, as with all changes, this is a new contract
Yeah.
between employee and expectations and employer, and
Yeah.
so, like, if you're the employer, okay, you're entering into a new contract, well, that means you need to think or maybe do some things differently. What is that? You need to set really clear goals and intended outcomes or targets, and you need to be very clear on what you need and when you need it. Like, gone is the ambiguous, like, "Oh, I wrote it on a paper, I'm somewhere, figure it out." Like, you're gonna have to be more intentional that way, and communication needs to go along with that in an effective way so that it's not just, like, something you're, like, trying to hot potato over the fence and, like, you need to be accountable for if it lands or not because
Yeah.
you need to be accountable to know that they understand that was clear and you're on the same page. And then as an individual, I think there's accountability to be like, "Listen, people, this could be really great for everyone, and I'm just gonna say, don't fuck it up.
Yeah.
Don't fuck it up." And so what does that mean? That means you show them you can be trusted. You show them that, "Yes, I can have my time, and yes, I will deliver." You be organized, you communicate a lot because both of you need to communicate. I feel like a mom. Both of you need to do this. Both of you need to communicate a lot, but the biggest thing that is going to mess it up is if you start fucking around and then that's going to quickly go the wayside. And I think this is such a positive thing. And so from an individual perspective, what do you need to do in your role? What are the expectations coming down from you, from your boss and your leadership team? How are you going to deliver that in this new model where you have a lot more flexibility? So you need to have a lot more discipline on yourself to ensure that you're doing that and being on track. Don't screw it up because I really want this. We all really want this, okay? We're a team, guys. Don't get up. We're doing it together.
You're a little spicier on these, this
I
day
am,
as
right?
opposed
I
to
don't know.
early on Friday morning.
Oh, yeah, this is not a good time. It's better to be Friday morning.
Note to self, might be moving morning. No, we love spicy brie, and so I think just to wrap this one
Do
up.
we?
Yeah, we do. I do think that this is one for leaders to really think about and even ways to dip their toe in a little bit
Hmm.
into how you can give a little bit more autonomy to your employees with good parameters, good communication, good outcome measurement, Because it also, I think, it protects the employer a lot more because when you have those clear things, they don't meet them. It's, that constant then you actually can have performance conversations quicker. You can, narrow in and coach on the things that they're maybe not delivering on or figuring out that model doesn't work for this employee. Right? Could be that too. We're not necessarily saying here that it has to be an all in situation, but I think it definitely works for certain types of people, and, I love that.
Love that actually, because like what a great way to reward someone without a promotion or a this or a that
Yeah,
in a way that gives them so much value. Make this very valuable. Make this a highly
yeah,
attainable thing and make this a target. Make this something you have to work towards. And maybe that helps with that don't screw it up relationship or conversation because it gives you a way to manage it and to incentivize people to want it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is a fun one. Gensler just came out with some data on a study that they did, that actually was contradicted what everybody thought. Was that AI heaviest users, like those that have really taken AI into their work space, would actually just be behind the screens, just managing, all their bots and chats and all these things that they're doing behind the scenes. But actually, what they found was that the people who use AI the most had more time to spend on human interaction and had way more time to have deep conversations and to build strategies and that sort of thing. And this is contrary to what was really thought about a year ago would be the outcome. So what are you thinking about that? How are you feeling about this? Yeah.
Please, this is exactly what we stand for. Data. And also the value of the human relationships then as a result of that. And so, like, I love this headline. And I think this is exactly like, I mean, it feels like no surprise to us because this is something that we've been really
Right.
touting for a long time in the sense that AI is going to take away tasks, it's going to give people more time. But that doesn't mean that you're going to get less results. You're actually getting
Right.
better results now because people are doing the work that actually, like, doing the tactical work is one thing to bring something to life, but the whole other piece of bringing it's like bringing something to life and then making something real and
Yeah.
established. And making something real and established spends most of the time in the relationship piece and in the peer to peer, stakeholder to stakeholder, partner to partner, whatever that needs to look like. And so I am really excited to hear what kind of outcomes companies are seeing out of this by now having the ability to do that. And what's gonna happen with the magic of being able to spend more time together. I also think just for people in general, being to establish more of a human connection,
Yeah.
I think is gonna be so valuable for everyone in so many ways. What do you think about it?
Well, I think that's one really good point. Like, we've heard so much friction on the return to office, mandates of companies. And most of that is because they feel like they were sitting behind a computer at home and then they're sitting behind a computer in the office. But if companies really grabbed onto this and really thought about this and said, you're behind the computer stuff happens when you're at home. And when you're in the office, we're expecting you to collaborate and brainstorm and bring big ideas to life and to execution. You definitely will get much more buy-in. Like that is a humans want to be impactful. They want to know and see a clear reason that their time is valuable inside the organization. And people contact is where we get some really great outcomes. So I really do love that this has come up. We have been talking about this for a year. We should take those calls a year ago and we were just chatting about this is our dream. Like we want to see this balance between AI and giving humans more human time and
Mhm.
less time behind the screens.
And just as individuals, like, think what that's gonna do for, like when you just go into a great, like it's not a meeting where you're, like, obsessing over a timeline deliverable this, it's, like, more discovery, it's more of a
Yeah,
brain space where you get to collaborate, and think of all the magic that comes out of those meetings and how energized you are after and how excited everybody is.
exactly.
Like, think of, like and I think that's the thing, is, like, you think of how, like, you wanna motivate your team? What's
Yeah,
more motivating than getting to get together with a bunch of stakeholders and come up with new solutions, feel like you have momentum,
right.
feel like you really made a difference with your contributions in that, and also just having, again, that connection, because no matter how introverted you are, I think everybody gets something out of those conversations, whether you're the active participant, the more passive participant
Yeah.
who's absorbing and wanting to think about it later. We all spend time on social media for exactly this reason, to listen to new ideas
Yeah.
and new ways of thinking and to come away feeling enlightened and supported. So, like, let's bring that back, just off of our screens and scrolling for, and back really back into your community, back into your teams, back into the places where you spend time. Like, I'm just so excited for the value that will come from that kind of a shift in the way we're living our lives right now. Because I think post pandemic, we've gone way, way
Like,
too screen and heavy in that way.
and it's a really good example is like one of the things that we do at League is we use AI to kind of create frameworks. And from those frameworks, it gives us a bouncing off point where you
Hmm.
can really get into the conversation. Because sometimes we did, in the traditional model, spend a whole bunch of time just spinning on a whole bunch of ideas and didn't make much
Yeah.
headway. But
Yeah.
you can use the AI to give you sort of a idea starter, a thought starter, and then you get in there and you really have a place of where you can get to the bigger ideas, to the
Hmm.
really flesh things out, because I
Yeah.
think you get to execution faster that
Yeah.
way.
100%. And just think too, because I think why people shied away from meetings is because you have these really great conversations.
Yeah,
Nobody
and
freaking
nobody
took
does
notes.
anything.
And there was nobody does anything. So, like, what's the point? Well, guess what? Now it can be recorded.
Yeah,
Now you get all of your meetings summarized to you. Now you have actions and takeaways and TLDRs that everyone can grasp onto right away. Because I think that's a big reason why is you have all of this distilling. Nobody sets an A for, like, okay, it's your job at this meeting to listen, to record, and to distill and disseminate to everyone. Like, that was nobody's job, so nothing would
right,
happen. Well, now we have tools to do the front end that you just mentioned and the back end. Well, like, this is how AI can enable that to become
right,
something that is incredibly meaningful and momentum driving, I
yeah,
think, out of these kind of conversations and meetings and having people come together, and it's less of a, we just wasted. I don't love when people come in and are like, "This is an expensive meeting. This is
yeah,
like an expensive time." Well, the salaries. I don't know if we can. I know a lot of people say that. I'm not trying to be an asshole because I know lots of
they're
people who
not
do say
gonna
that.
say
And
that.
sorry if you're one of my friends and you say that. I didn't mean that. I think badly of you. I just think that it's the wrong way to think about it, because I think conversations with purpose get a lot of things out of them, and again, it just comes back to intentionality and having some intent behind what you're doing, and not just walking along and just being like, let's just talk
Yeah,
for
and I
45
think you
minutes
just
and
know that
without
when
a.
humans are
Yeah.
at the same room talking,
Yeah.
weird things happen. Like, that isn't something AI is gonna replace for us.
Yeah.
It's that
Well, and
that
Google, I
conversation, that
think.
building on top of ideas, that because we are looking into the future, AI doesn't look into the future, at least not at this stage, right? It uses all
Yeah.
the information it has in the past to give you an outcome that you could use in the future, but it doesn't actually put you into the future, which, speaking to humans, we can because we can reason and we can forecast and we can anticipate, right? Based on the past. But
Exactly.
okay, this is one of my favorites. Okay, so there was a story this week, overarching, I think, many stories that were talking about companies aren't getting an ROI out of the AI that they've already put in to the companies. The CEOs are like having to go in front of boards saying, I'm spending $1 million a month, but we're not seeing an increase in revenue or a decrease in costs. And yet we're seeing at least in North America, we're seeing, all the big LMs, OpenAI and Anthropic, they're,
Mhm. Mhm.
anybody knows anything about business cycles and new industries
Yeah.
probably anticipated this. This wasn't a headline though.
Yeah.
And most CEOs made the decision to jump in really early. What are you thinking about now that the data actually aligns to what a brand new business model looks like?
I really am spicy this afternoon because, like, what comes to my mind is like, I roll. No shit, Sherlock. Like, no shit. Like, it's change management. Like, it's too soon. It's too early
Yeah,
to have your ROI. And I think all that does is speaks to me is like how companies are so bad at change management and
right.
are so bad at implementing something new. And I saw this time and time again in corporate too. It's just like, you're looking for those short-term wins. And again, it's like a bit of that losing the forest through the trees kind of
Yeah,
thing. And so I think, and that's interesting because I think it challenges like companies and leaders to be like, there's a certain game that's been being played to be successful. And I think it's been pretty near term visioned in that way because you're And so considering that AI is coming in and it's actually like it's not a standard thing that's coming out. This is like a material shift in the way that we're going to work. Is it a near-term game or is it a longer-term game and how are you positioning your organization within that? And I think the other thing too that comes back to me around this is intentionality. It's like the other no shit is like one, it's too soon. It's way too soon to have an ROI. And like it also highly irritates me when like leaders who are at executive levels, like it's just like, did you just shoot straight to exec? Did you ever actually have to do something in your organization to know how long it takes to get the ROI to show up? It will, but like, do you have concept around that? Because like for your business, like whatever that is, and if you don't, like get comfortable and understanding like what would that reasonably take in your business and what does your business cycle look like for yours with your customers with the way your revenue comes in with how these things happen and are you even clear what ROI you're looking for? Because I
Right.
think that's the other thing is people say, we didn't get an ROI. It's like, did you know what ROI you even want? Because I don't think you did. You were just expecting to see your P&L looks fucking amazing now. And you've cut like all this off your bottom line. And so like, what were you even trying to accomplish? And I've seen that time and time again at organizations where people make a change without even defining like what the change is supposed to be. And it takes me back to like when I spent a bit of time in IT, like there's a process and like in tech and any of it, it's like, so if you say you're testing something new, like you have a whole list of like, here's the change we're making, here's the intended result we're expecting, and gut check, did that happen or not happen? And that's the way you go through actually ensuring some of these things. And so that's what comes to mind for me around this is it's just like you got to be a lot more intentional with your plan. You can't just slap ChatGPT in there,
Yeah.
hire a bunch of consultants to come and tell you, how you're going to AIify your company. Hands off the wheel, leave it to your middle management and front line to figure it out without
Right.
really defining what you're trying to accomplish and then turn around. So it's like, well, how does one, where I would start, where does AI make most sense for your business?
Right.
Where would the business that you do, where does optimizing something through machines, learning, through having, a non-human touch work? And where does it make sense? And where's the biggest bang for your buck? Focus there. And then with that clarity, it's also then, okay, well, then we have some expectations around what this will enable for us. There's also a bit of testing because you might not be right. Because how well did you identify your
Right.
problem and how well did you identify that? So how can you do these little micro tests in your business first to understand where you're going to get the best approach and material, like, or ROI from that? And then once you do, scale it. And so I think that's all of my no shit Sherlock notes of just like, think about it, think about what you're trying to do, and then communicate that and then measure it. Cause that's the other thing is like, yeah, of course you don't have ROI because you didn't set up implementations to measure the difference, probably. Gonna
Yeah.
bet a lot of money on that you didn't. And so then what? So that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'm gonna go answer the doorbell while I do it because some of our team is showing up. So I will be right back, but I'm listening with my AirPods.
Yeah. So, couple things I'll touch on there is one, I think that this is it goes back to what we've heard week after week is so many of these CEOs were pressured by their boards, by sales companies, by like patriotism to be making sure AI was in the forefront of the business decisions that they were going to make for 2024 and 2025 and obviously continuing into 2026. Now, I think what I would challenge business owners and
We're gonna be
leaders
back
to
in a few.
do
See you
is
tomorrow,
there
1:50.
an opportunity to reevaluate where you're using it? And I think to Bree's point, I suspect there's places where you are getting a pretty nice return on your investment, but that might be overshadowed by playing with agents, right? We know that the building of the agents right now, depending on what they're doing, could be quite expensive because the compute is still very pricey. The data center industry has to catch up with the need for the energy that we require with AI right now, making it quite expensive. And I think it's a really good time for CEOs and business owners to really look at where they're using this, where does it make sense, and then being able to have a great conversation with their board. You know what? We know the agent work is really expensive right now. But here's where we think if we don't do the agents right now and take the hit on that agent development, we won't get this outcome. And we really think that outcome is valuable to growing our business 5 years from now. And I
Hmm.
think that CEOs should be able to have those kind of, really good, wholesome conversations with a board that is also experiencing like this isn't just AI's, hitting one sector. It is hitting us in everything we do. Our phones all have new AI features. I got light switches now that have different AI features. Like everything around you, including business, has AI now. And so it's a real ecosystem change. It's not just a product change. And I think this is a time when we could really have some good conversations and decide what's right for your company.
I love too that you kind of brought in this whole concept around like invest first for the return because I think like in startup or in tech, like that's a natural way that you approach
Yeah,
company building. But at the same time, coming from corporate, that is not the natural way that a corporate would look at it. So I think that's actually something really interesting to add to the conversation in the sense of you're kind of being shifted out of your traditional norm of how, from a corporate, you're kind of having to act a little bit more like a new company in some of these things. And probably the way to win is maybe to model some of the building behaviors out of something more that would be startup leaning versus your large established corporate. And I think that's a really interesting perspective on that because that might make things quite look a little different and you actually have to like kind of remodel your old like one learn how to do that because if you've always
right.
lived in
You probably
corporate
don't know
you
how to.
wouldn't no and I remember leaving corporate and going to startup and I was like fascinating, I
Yeah.
love this because in corporate like you kind of like at least in the corporate I was in it was a more traditional industry and so it was like you built linearly and de-risking with confidence so it was like you kind of like thought planned planned some more,
Same.
did a little work, planned some more, did a pilot, did more planning. And then like you slowly, slowly. So it was a very long trajectory. And then coming into tech and I was like, this is so cool in the sense of like you live in that world, you get a very strong feeling of risk. I found anyways, and like we have to do it this way. Otherwise it gets a little crazy and it'll be risky and who knows what's gonna happen. And then going into tech and watching it be a more of an accordion where
Yeah.
you take some risks and you do overstretch a bit, but then you have a plan to catch it up. So it's like you're always and it's uncomfortable, don't get me wrong, like, it's a very different way of building, but through that, I think what I saw too is it's like, you know what? When you do that and you're able to fast iterate, it actually decreases some of the risk. So
Very
even though
much.
you're like you feel a little bit like, "Oh god, we're really just giving her and knowing what's gonna happen," but you're able to pivot quicker so that the outcomes actually weren't necessarily any different or riskier than it would have been had you done it the other way. Like it was very and the returns are higher. So like it's just kind of like very fascinating. And I've loved that shift and getting comfortable with that kind of building because it's a very different way of approaching the business growth or business change or anything new.
But you are right that we build it that way in tech because we are creating a new industry or we are
Yeah.
doing
You
something,
have to.
a new economy that doesn't work or we're disrupting the old. That is the nature of the tech startup. And in this case, all companies are now having to deal with a new industry, right?
Mhm.
It's not like that new industry is only a new
Yeah.
silo. It's
Yeah.
impacting everyone. And so taking a little bit more of an iterative approach or getting
Mhm.
really, really good at telling investors and your
Mhm.
board what you expect and why you're willing to take the risk right now, because that
Mhm.
outcome will be grand when the prices
Mhm.
come down, when,
Mhm.
when you have all this new automation in your business that will catapult the growth forward and your hockey stick is just delayed compared to the LLMs. They've been at this also many years getting these things ready for mainstream consumption. Now, so your growth in a corporation is going to be maybe a couple years delayed of theirs, but they have a hockey stick. The other ones that do a great job of implementing will also have a hockey stick growth.
Yeah. Well, and maybe it's a bit of a call to action too, because I think in tech, the big companies like, the Amazon or the Googles, they started out, so they know this methodology and
Right.
built it through. But if you don't come from that space, maybe it's a good time
That's
to
what they're
start
doing.
partnering, getting curious with other companies in other spaces to help kind of understand a little more cross collaboration around how people are
How to
using
do
it,
that. Yeah.
how to do it, how it's benefiting them. Like that in general might be a good way. I'm gonna go. I'll be right back. The dog.
Okay, well, she's gone. I'm going to move us on to the big action. So, this week's big action, because we really do want the message like we are so pro AI, like we use it all the time. And So we just want everybody to try using it in a new way. So lots of people use what I call the, Google on steroids approach. Put a question in, see what AI gives you back as a search, kind of more like a search engine. But try one of the other things, like build a picture, now we do all of our prototyping that way. Like try something different. I'm sure some of the people listening to the podcast, hopefully my children, they already know how to do this. They're probably going, Mom, you're so out of date. But there's lots of people out there that aren't trying different ways of just getting comfortable with the technology.
I think the other thing too is it's like you get into, the Claudes or Canvas or other ways that aren't just like a chat GPT. There's some really, really, even just for like helping your life, like
Yeah.
repeat things that you want done. Like you can build all sorts of cool things around like calendar or
Calendars.
all sorts of stuff. Like there's just a lot of like helping organize your files. Like there's a million different things, so even think of it from like a what would an assistant be nice for. And there's a lot of opportunity to practice some things in creating some like easy wins for yourself that way.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what
Yeah.
everybody has to say.
All right.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Bree. Love the spiciness. We might do this again on Thursdays.
Like a mix of like trying to really make sure I get my point across. I've got a barking old dog in here
Yeah, we
who's
got
like
guests
bullying
arriving. It's
everybody.
just like this is what our
You
day's like.
know? Yeah, this is the chaos. Welcome to the jungle, everyone.
All right. Thanks, listeners. If you found this helpful, please share it with your friends, follow, and we'll see you next week. Bye.